Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. You guys remember that Aptera was in St. Moritz, Switzerland for this Follow the Entrepreneur event where they were looking for some investors in Europe, and they finally put up the video of their presentation, and it's available on their YouTube page, and I will link their video in the description below. So if you want to watch it over there without my commentary, then just you can close this down and click on that link, and then you'll get a pure unfiltered video. Otherwise, we'll just watch it together, and I'll pause the video and interject anything that comes to mind. Okay, let's get to it.
So without further ado, I wanted to bring to your attention some really cool entrepreneurs. We've got, many of you saw the Gamma vehicle, which was unveiled on Saturday night. And we were introduced to Aptera via friends, via Paolo. Again, Paolo, one of the leading entrepreneurs, the chairman of Galvani, who we're going to hear later this morning, very tapped into the automotive/mobility industry, and introduced us to the people at Motor Valley Accelerator. We're not too far away from a key hub of automotive innovation. They introduced us to Steve and Chris, who are going to be coming to the stage in just a moment.
Yeah, so it looks like Aptera went and made this arrangement with CPC Group. CPC Group is in the Motor Valley in Modena, Italy, and they met some people there, and then they introduced them to this group. So it seems like this whole CPC thing is working out pretty good for them.
Aptera just blew me away. I didn't know how I'd quite miss this, but then I'm not a driver of any EV. But the innovation that they have, having sat now in a couple of investor meetings, this is much more than just, oh, another EV and isn't it cool? This is quite a revelation, from material science to the crowdfunding. It's not clear how you've had such extraordinary success getting 45,000 pre-orders, 65 million of crowdfunding. But Akash, please stand up as well. Akash is the head of engineering, who's been responsible for getting that incredible vehicle here. Thank you so much for coming along. And so we've given 45 minutes to Steve and Chris, the co-founders and the CEOs of Aptera, and I'd like you to please welcome them to the stage so that they can share with you their stories as entrepreneurs and what they're doing with Aptera. And why it's important to us all. Steve and Chris, here you go.
Thank you, Julie.
There you go. Excellent.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Very good. My name is Steve Fambro. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Aptera Motors, here with my other co-founder, co-CEO, Chris Anthony. We're going to speak at different parts of the presentation today. But I just want to have a placeholder for the previous discussion with Brendan and Nigel about health outcomes and how we might encourage people to avoid the doctor altogether with different nutrition and supplements. So that's our discussion at lunch. Actually comes from farming. You'll see about farming in just a minute and how it's related. So most of you saw the vehicle the other night, I hope. What's unique about it, it's a solar electric vehicle. Gets up to 1,600 kilometers per charge with the largest battery pack. And it uses the sun to recharge itself up to 60 kilometers a day in sunny places like San Diego or Dubai. Imagine it's a little less here, but who knows? It was pretty sunny yesterday, so it might be competitive. 4 different pillars that really allow us to do what we've done. You see the vehicle looks different, so the first thing people think, well, it looks so different, is it safe? Actually, it adheres to almost all of the modern automotive standards, all the FMVSS that you would expect in a normal passenger car. It has ultra strong carbon composite parts and safety cell to make it really safe. And we've moved the motors from inside to outside to the wheels to give us more room for crash absorption. And of course, solar is just a novelty on any vehicle unless the vehicle is efficient, because it's not enough energy to do anything with. Our vehicle is so efficient, only uses 100 watt hours per mile, that allows us to use solar to give meaningful charge daily, so most people won't even have to plug it in. Maybe they have to plug it in every couple of weeks or months. And we talk about execution. We've got a management team that has experience from building other companies, from SpaceX, who have set up manufacturing plants for rockets and cars. And we've built these systems already from the ground up. MES, ERP systems, inventory management. We're building the vehicles virtually to test all of those things. So we're sidestepping the kind of typical automotive manufacturing startup or product startup where people build everything on a spreadsheet and then try and scale. And then, of course, Chris can talk to you later about enthusiasm. We've got a great social media following, lots of users, lots of YouTube views, and you've got some stats to share on that. Sure.
All right, so I think it was very wise for them to put safety as number one, because whenever you show anyone the Aptera, that is kind of the first thing that they think about. I mean, the first thing I think about is efficiency, and that's the pro. But when most people see it, they see this very odd-looking vehicle, very unique-looking vehicle, and they wonder, is that thing safe? And so it's good that they're focusing on that.
So this is one of the roof crush tests from the early vehicles that you can see meeting the...
So I don't know if this is a roof crush test from their first iteration like 10 years ago, or if this is a roof crush test from the current iteration, but with the honeycomb composite. Because I don't think this is definitely not a roof crush test from the CPC group, because those parts have not been made yet, because they're just cutting the steel for that right now. I'm guessing this is from 10 years ago. That's my guess.
Modern automotive standards is not easy in a lightweight composite vehicle, so it requires thinking out of the box. You can't think conventionally. If you think conventionally, you're going to end up with a 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pound EV, which is why most EVs look like that today. They are thought of and then executed in a conventional manner. And convention just won't work if you want to make EVs affordable. Why is that? Batteries are the most expensive part of the EV. So why wouldn't you design an EV platform that uses the fewest batteries possible? If you do so, you lower the largest costs and you can make it more affordable. That's the fundamental reason behind efficiency in Aptera. And that's why safety, has been something that's a real challenge to achieve in a very lightweight vehicle. And it has to be lightweight for those other reasons. Again, moving the motors out to the wheels gives us over 700 millimeters of of impact absorption, which is more than enough to achieve a 5-star rating.
Yeah, so if you think about it, this, what he points out is since you move the wheels out, the wheels don't push into the passenger compartment. Like usually in a regular car, the front wheel is kind of sitting in front of where your legs are or your feet are, and then when it gets crushed, the wheel can be pushed into the passenger compartment. But in this area, the wheels won't encroach on it; they kind of move off to the side. So yeah.
And this is not only from us, but working with our partners like CPC and Roush in the United States, who have been simulating, doing all the different simulations before we do real crash testing, and give us confidence in those numbers. We're going to talk a little bit about ourselves. So my background is an electrical engineer. I started in biotech for a little company named Illumina. That's me down here at the bottom with hair before children. What you're looking at is the largest DNA synthesizer in the world. So how many have ever heard of the company Illumina? Oh, you have, okay, 2 people. You ever heard of 23andMe? 3 people, okay. So Illumina made the technology for 23andMe. And most people don't know when you're doing full genotyping, that's one thing. But genotyping is like, if you're looking for something specific, it's like going through your whole house to find a cup of sugar. Well, SNP analysis, single nucleotide polymorphism, is like going to your cupboard to look for the sugar. It really shrinks the amount of DNA that you have to look at. But to do so, you have to produce the conjugate DNA, the opposite DNA, so it matches up. That's what this machine does. It's called the oligator. It produces oligonucleotides. And why is this important? This is a 3rd generation. By the time this was built, it was already 1,000 times more efficient than the previous 2 generations that we built in just about 4 years. So it was really from Illumina and working with this great team here, being a part of this team, that I first gained this appreciation for efficiency and not making incremental improvements, but step function improvements, order of magnitude improvements. And by being so efficient, we put all the other competitors out of business in this space. I think Illumina now, they're a $27 billion company, $30 billion company, $34 billion, I think, and they own 98% of this space. I was getting bored at Illumina, and I like planes. I was learning how to fly at the time. And I found this company, Xcore Aerospace in Mojave, and they had a problem with this rocket motor. This is a rocket motor, very easy, long, easy plane. This was a demonstrator of their rocket technology. And they had this igniter, this red box there, that was problematic. It was heavy, it had problems in humidity, it wasn't working out. So I designed an igniter circuit for them, and also a pump overspeed circuit to shut off the pumps if there was ever air bubble in the fuel. And that was important because the pumps would grenade, they would explode if there's an air bubble, so it had to happen really quickly. So I was able to take off almost 900 grams of material from this rocket plane just by making the ignition system much smaller and more efficient, and also the pump overspeed controllers much smaller and more efficient, and that allowed them to achieve their goals. Again, you're seeing a trend here about efficiency, about our thinking of making things smaller, better, lighter, faster. Then I got into farming. It's a big, weird change, from biotech to rockets to farming, but I love food, I love eating it, I love cooking it, I love talking about it. I can change any conversation that we'll have here today into food, I guarantee you. But I'm also a lazy farmer, so I don't like tending to the crops outside, and I don't like using pesticides because my daughter at the time liked to crawl around on the dirt. And so at the same time, the aphids were eating my kale. So what to do? I can't use pesticides. I don't want to give my kale to the aphids. So I discovered hydroponics, and then the light went on about, well, I could shrink the size of the plants, the space that they occupy. I could stack them up with very thin LEDs. I could control the environment so that we give them the right amount of air. Because plants need air to transpire. They have to, that's how they get water and nutrients up into the system is through wind. And so we developed these microfarms here in California. I don't know if you guys remember the plant lady that asked people how many plants they have in their house. I was trying not to raise my hands, like, well, at one time I had up to 30,000 plants in here. But we would take basically a plant from seed to packaging in the store like this. This was something we'd sell at Whole Foods in 30 days. So it was a systematized production cycle, just like making DNA. Everything was traceable in a sort of a laboratory management system. You had traceability from the seeds to the nutrients to the plant itself. And it was modeled very much on how we do things in biotech, but basically to grow food very quickly. This took me to the Middle East, where I worked for the Al Nahyan family doing ag tech deal flow in Abu Dhabi, which took me all over the world. But we developed a farm there in Abu Dhabi and had it certified USDA organic. It was the first USDA organic hydroponic farm outside of the United States. And we developed sales channels not only into the UAE with the products grown on the palace, but we exported them to Singapore and Hong Kong, had to develop cold chains from scratch because you can imagine they don't export cold stuff from the desert. They import it, but they don't export it. So teaching the airlines and everybody how to handle that was a great learning experience. So the trend here that you're going to see with both of us is using technology to solve problems, trying to do it more efficiently, faster, lighter weight. This was a brand, for those of you that read Arabic, it says Sakar Farms, Sakar's falcon. Now I'm going to turn it over to Chris so he can talk to you about some of his creations and how they relate to Aptera.
Okay, so Steve goes through his background. So we already knew about the Illumina, and he talks about where he worked for that aerospace company, and then his FamGrow Farms thing. The kind of interesting thing here is that he worked in Abu Dhabi with several people for a while, so he has like good connections in that region of the world, and I think that's coming into play right now because he just said in the previous podcast that he was leaving to United Arab Emirates to try to close some deals when they were talking about they were working on 4 or 5 big deals. So I think through his contacts in the Middle East, he's found some people that may be interested in Aptera, which is I think working out well for them.
Sure, I'm Chris. Steve and I actually met when he was working at Illumina Through a mutual friend, I was building up my boat company and building advanced composite structures to be very, very strong, but also in a manufacturable way. And he was receiving shipments of...
You got to stand right here.
He was receiving shipments of composite parts to Illumina because back in those days, FedEx and UPS wouldn't deliver them to your house. So our mutual friend said, oh, you guys are both working on composites, you should meet each other. So as I was building Epic Boats into an international brand, we were started with wakeboard boats, but then grew into fishing boats. We were building 6,000 or 7,000 boats a year. We were the #1 center console fishing boat brand in Texas and Florida for quite some time. Steve and I started working on the Aptera and how that body structure would look and how it would actually work in high-scale manufacturing, and it seemed to be a match made in heaven. I've also, this is my 8th startup, so I've been through the ringer quite a few times, from boats to lithium batteries, and then to Aptera. This is my battery company, Flux Power. We make lithium iron phosphate batteries for the logistics industry, forklifts and robots and the tugs that take your luggage around the airport. But things that need more power than lead acid can provide, and they want 10 years, 15 years of service. Lead acid usually only offers 2 or 3.
Chris is very modest, of course. I don't know about here in Europe and in the United States, when you buy anything, a 6-pack of beer or a pack of diapers, it's been handled by a forklift or one of those electric pallet jacks about 10 times in its existence. So the material handling industry is a massive industry for lithium ion batteries, and his technology has let companies remove their heavy lead acid batteries where you have to have 3 batteries for a forklift instead of 1, because one has to be charging, one has to be cooling down, and one's in the vehicle. So lithium has really transformed material handling. Efficiency is everything about Aptera. We're obsessed with it, and really it's the only way to design an electric vehicle. Again, conventional standard is steel frames, making vehicles look like boxes, and then putting batteries in it to see if you can go far. Well, when we started the company, we realized after doing some analysis that most of the energy a car uses going down the highway goes just to push the air out of the way. So if you know that, and you're also putting really expensive batteries in the vehicle to push the car down the highway, why wouldn't you think of a shape that pushes the least amount of air out of the way so you can use the fewest number of batteries? Because remember, batteries are the most expensive part of the electric vehicle. So we achieve this efficiency with 2 ways. Aerodynamics, lowering the drag at highway speeds, like I mentioned, because remember, in most cars, half the energy goes just to push the air out of the way. And with lightweight composites, which brings us to our partner and our VP of Engineering, Akos, who helped us find this partner, CPC in Modena, Italy. Lots of people make composites. Chris made thousands of boats a year with composites. With very modern lightweight methods that his team evolved. But we thought that would be sufficient for Aptera. When we started collecting pre-orders, we thought if we're making 2,000 or 3,000 boats, or 2,000 or 3,000 Apteras a year, that would be fine. We got 2,000 pre-orders in the first week. Now we have over 41,000. And so we had to find a different way to make this composites. We couldn't make it the traditional way. We had to think of very high speed, high throughput, and that's what Akos introduced us to with our partner CPC in Italy.
So again, they reiterate the reasoning for that. Originally they had honeycomb sandwich composite structure, and they were going with that, and that's when they thought they were going to make 1,000 to 2,000 vehicles a year. And they were, I think, planning on hand building those frames using like a wooden jig or something in San Diego. But then they realized if they want to scale and start building, 20, 30,000 a year or more and expand it to be really a mass market vehicle, they need something that can churn out these parts much faster than a jig. And obviously with the CPC group, with those dies and just forging it and just pressing out the parts, you can crank them out. I think the original thing was like you could make one every like 5 minutes or so. So that's obviously much faster.
Let's see, just one thing on the cargo space. Most people don't realize how big the Aptera is if you haven't seen it in the trunk. It's over 980 liters of space. So it's enough to put your skis, enough to put your Costco run or whatever. Again, solar power is a game changer for us because you can't use solar power in a conventional electric vehicle. They're too heavy, they're too big, they use too much energy for solar to even play a part. The Aptera uses about 1/3 of the energy of a typical small, efficient EV. That means it's going to charge faster. That means we can use technologies like solar. Most people don't know that a typical car has about 200 pieces in the body, what they call the body in white. 200 pieces of metal that are stamped, formed, held, fixtured, welded together, and then have to be adjusted for the tolerance that inevitably the changes that happen after welding when things twist and move. And so that tooling up for a 200-piece die stamping set for a car is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't have 200 pieces or even 20. Aptera is made from 6 structural pieces. It's no secret, you know, it looks like maybe a toy or a toy car or model. Their VP of engineering did some time at Mattel. And when you think about how to design a vehicle with the fewest number of parts, you look outside the industry to figure out how to do it. And that's what CPC, our partner at Modena, has helped us do. You know, take this from many parts down to 6 parts, only 6 parts to build this. And this composite, unlike what we're building for the boats, is 100% recyclable. Again, up to 1,600 kilometers per charge because the platform is so efficient. There's no way another EV could achieve that because it would be too many batteries to be practical. And most people in the latitudes around Southern California, Italy, things like that, you may never need to charge the vehicle at all because you'll be getting up to 60 kilometers a day of free charge from the sun. And again, those features just aren't available on other platforms because they're too heavy and they're too wasteful in terms of energy. We'll talk a little bit about our team. We've got world-class folks here from SpaceX, from Mercedes, Porsche, and Chery, as you see here. Folks that have really helped us think new ways to build this vehicle, to scale it, to build the social media presence, to make sure design is infused in every element, to make sure it gets built reliably. One of the challenges that Pablo had when he was working for Elon Musk is, you know, he wanted to build rockets. Pablo wanted to build the rockets in one building, and SpaceX didn't have one building. They had 10 buildings and then 20 buildings. Now they have 40 buildings. And so how do you make the supply chain function building rockets with 40 different buildings where you have golf carts bringing parts from one building to another? He made that work. So if he can build rockets for Elon Musk, I think he can build this vehicle for us. Solar is the biggest part of our intellectual property. The solar team has had to figure out how to bend solar panels in 3D, how to make them reliable, how to make them last for over 10 years, how to make them stand up to hail and baseballs and stuff like that, and how to make them low cost, automotive grade. Flat panels on your roof are one thing, but putting something on a vehicle and expecting it to last for 10 or 15 years is an entirely different endeavor, and that's really serves as the largest part of our intellectual property portfolio. Of course, Chris, coming from a battery company, built a battery team for Aptera. We have over 4 patent applications with that, making a very dense, thin pack that gives us high volumetric efficiency, more than a typical EV, and over 5 patents on how the body goes together with just unique 6 pieces that it has. This is our plant in Carlsbad, California. This is also where the headquarters is. We've been working with Monroe and Associates. How many people know Monroe and Associates? Maybe you, okay, a couple of people. So
it's too bad this video is not good enough to read these things, because there is you know, I can't read, like, so this is definitely CPC Group. This is some company called DURR or DURA, and then ALSI, I believe. Can't quite make out these things. I wish that was better.
Sandy Monroe liked us so much when they started consulting for us that he invested in us. And his team has been working with our staff to design the factory, not only the final assembly line, the final trim assembly as it's called, but the solar plant as well. So these aren't just drawings that are put up here. This is from Monroe and Associates and our team Again, working with Red Viking and Dewar and all these different well-known tier 1 supplier, tier 2 suppliers and parts service providers for automotive manufacturing lets us operate this factory like a normal car factory, with the exception that it costs a fraction of what a typical car factory costs. And some of our partners. Chris?
Sure. With a great team and great technologies and great supply chain partners, we're ready to ramp into production by the end of this year or early 2024. It's an aggressive ramp, not a slow ramp. We want to begin building 40 vehicles a day as soon as possible, and then we want to duplicate that 9 months after, building 80 vehicles a day, and that equates to about 20,000 vehicles a year. Our enthusiasm has just been off the charts. It's been amazing how many people have come out to support solar mobility. We have almost 1 million followers now. We have 41,285 reservations as of this morning. Over 15,000 investors have invested in our crowdfunding. We realized early on that our story was very, had lots of commercial appeal, clickbait, as you'd call it. When you see a 3-wheeled vehicle with solar panels on it, looks like a spaceship, you click on that and read the story. So it's been amazing to amass just a real cult following for what we do. Had some amazing press coverage over the last year. Not a lot of mainstream press coverage, but we got on Jay Leno, and we had the Wall Street Journal cover us, and some other things that have really shone a light on what we do. And we've capitalized on that by gaining pre-orders at a pace that no other EV comparable has. This illustrates Rivian and Fisker. Some of the other people hide their data a little better, like Lucid. But we got to 25,000 pre-orders for our vehicle faster than any other EV comparable out there. And we did it with zero advertising budget, just a communications team. So this illustrates Rivian's growth to 25,000 orders, and they spent $30 million on advertising to get there. Aptera spent nothing. Our market opportunity is to grow this brand into 2025 and be cash flow positive by the end of 2024. Our use of proceeds, right now we are out actively raising a $150 million round to get into production. We've broken that into 50 million chunks for some of the bigger investors that we're talking to a lot of sovereign wealth and institutional investors, and also high net worth family office types. But that paces us out to the end of 2024 and gets us into 20,000 vehicles a year worth of production. Through 2028, we aspire to deliver 1 million Aptera by 2033. We do that by building.
Well, that is very aggressive. They're hoping to deliver 1 million vehicles by 2028. That's pretty ambitious. And they said that they want to be cash flow positive within 1 year of starting volume production. So at the end of 2024, they want to be cash flow positive. That would be impressive because Tesla was not cash flow positive for many years after they started. So, okay, well, those are very aggressive and optimistic projections, and I hope that they're right.
Building 8 plants through 2028, and each of those facilities would be capable of building 20,000 vehicles a year. We're starting in Southern California, in Carlsbad, where we'll have 1 manufacturing facility and 1 facility that does sub-assemblies. So our solar assemblies and some of our like front suspension, rear suspension, and then we bring all those pieces together to build the whole vehicle. We appreciate everybody's time and listening to us. We are actively taking investment. If you know anybody that's interested in a larger round, certainly talk to us or introduce us to those parties. But you can invest in Aptera at invest.aptera.us and become one of the over 15,000 investors we have. You can invest from $200 to $2 million through that platform. And we appreciate your time and that you've listened.
Okay, so it sounds like the audience that they were speaking to did not have like billionaires in there, because he was saying to the audience that you can invest, but if you know someone that can invest a large amount of money, let us know and they'll talk to them personally. Again, they reiterated that thing where they're working on $150 million to $200 million in funding, divided up into $50 million chunks. And he did mention they were talking to sovereign wealth funds, which means that they are probably talking to the sovereign wealth funds of some of these Middle Eastern countries, which I initially thought that they were talking mostly to private individuals in that area, but maybe they are talking to the sovereign wealth funds. And then, they're talking to institutional investors, hedge funds, and large wealthy family offices. Yeah, those are the places that they need to go to get the real money to go into production. So the accelerator program is definitely going to help with the initial tooling, but to get to this very aggressive ramp they're talking about, they do need like, hundreds of millions of dollars, which is where they're looking for. And I'm glad that they have several good prospects. The other important thing that they mentioned is that they were going to be cash flow positive within a year, which makes me think that their margins are quite good at the price that they're selling. So that's good. I mean, we were thinking that because of supply chain constraints and suppliers costing more, that maybe their profit margin would be eroded away and they'd be losing money for a long, long time and bleeding cash for a long time. But if they are indeed cash flow positive within a year, that's very good for them and very good for investors. Okay, thanks for watching this with me, guys. Thanks as always to our supporting members. Have a great day, everyone.